In your rebuttal, how much weight should standardized tests have in the evaluation of teachers?
They should play some role determining whether students are increasing their performance levels, but not the high-stakes standardized tests that we have in place today. It is important to make sure that we're measuring student performance, but that we're not discouraging good teachers from going into classrooms that will be helping the most challenging of students, those that making tremendous progress, though they can't show incredible success on a standardized test, should still be rewarded. Teachers should be rewarded for showing that progress with their students. I disagree with Mr. Abbott. His plan on page 21 calls for standardized testing of our 4-year-olds. And I can tell you in my time on the campaign trail and in all my years in the Texas Senate, I have never had a parent tell me that they think we need more standardized tests, not less. I will fight to make sure that we have fewer standardized tests across the board in Texas and that the high pressure that has been associated with them goes away.
Mr. Attorney General?
Sure, Gromer. What I'd like to urge everyone to do is to go to gregabbott.com. You can check out my education plan where what I want to do is, unlike what any other governor has talked about doing before, I want to genuinely elevate the Texas education system to be ranked #1 in the nation. We do that by starting with the fundamental building blocks for reading and writing from the very beginning. We continue that by providing tools and technologies to students so they are able to get plugged in to the most advanced learning opportunities, but also so they are prepared for the high-paying jobs of the future. Gomer, with regard to evaluation of teachers, I think it is important that decisions like that be made at local control. Part of my plan that you will find at gregabbott.com will, an entire division of it, focuses on returning education where it should be, and that is at the local level. My plan will lead us there and will lead us to be ranked #1 in the nation for educating our children.
Okay. Well, we've been asking the public to email and tweet questions for the candidates, so we're going to go now to Norma Garcia, who has a question from one of our viewers.
Yes, let me tell you, we have received hundreds of questions via social media, and we will continue to receive them throughout the debate. You can see many of them at the bottom of the screen. Tweet us right now, KERA News, hashtag Texas Debates. And our first question comes from Marta. She lives in Fort Worth. The question is, what is your position on providing driver's permits for undocumented immigrants? Attorney General Abbott, there is an effort to reintroduce a bill that would provide driver's permits to undocumented immigrants. This would be a state ID, could not be used for federal purposes. Would you support that bill? Yes, no, and why?
Norma, we've seen, or I guess it's Martha who's asking that question. We've seen problems with laws like that be challenged, if you would, by the Federal Real ID Act. I think that before we go down the pathway of trying to create these differentiated types of driver's licenses, we need to make sure that we are complying with federal law and not providing licenses that others could use for inappropriate purposes.
Senator Davis, you have said you would be in favor of providing driver's permits. Why should undocumented immigrants get special treatment? And do you think this could create a registry of second-class individuals?
I do not believe it creates special treatment for undocumented immigrants. Instead, what it addresses is a very real challenge in our state. The fact that people are driving on our roads across this state today who do not have the appropriate training and who are not insured. Unless we as a state create some system that provides a driver permit for every driver on the road, we cannot assure those two things. Other states have successfully done this, requiring in exchange for that permit special training to make sure that we have safe drivers on the road and proof of insurance. In my time as a Texas senator and before that as a city council person, I heard repeatedly from people who were involved in accidents with uninsured drivers, in many instances who were not in our state or our country legally. And I believe these driver permits and the accompanying requirement of insurance is important to keep all drivers safe on the road.
We now have time for rebuttals. Norma?
What should undocumented immigrants who want to abide by the rule and have insurance do in the meantime? Attorney General?
Well, you really raised the pivotal question, and that is, we are dealing with the challenge, whether it be with driver's licenses or so many other issues. We're dealing with undocumented individuals. And so the problem, whether it be to Marta or whomever, this problem is never going to be fixed as long as we have the broken immigration system that we have. If we want to fix the problem about ensuring that those who are here are driving safely on the road with a driver's license, what we really need to do is to fix our broken immigration system. Once we do that, then all of these peripheral issues will get resolved.
Senator Davis, what should the state do in the meantime with undocumented immigrants who need to drive?
I support comprehensive immigration reform and making sure that if people are willing to pass a background check, learn English, and pay back taxes owed in our state, that they have a path to become a legal worker here. It is modeled after President George Bush's plan. But let's face it, we are not going to see that happen anytime soon because Congress has failed to do its job to pass that kind of reform. I believe that Texas can't wait, and that in this next legislative session, we do need to address the issue of making sure that every driver on our road has proper training and is insured to keep other drivers on our roads safe.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to return to questions for both of our candidates, but right now we want to spend a little time and talk with both of you about something that is relevant with respect to your serving as governor. So right now, Peggy Fekak has the first conversation with Senator Davis.
Senator, you and Attorney General Abbott both have focused on ethics in this campaign. I'd like to ask about the intersection of your public office and your private business. On the Fort Worth City Council, you sometimes voted on projects that used your title business. As a senator, you voted on North Texas Tollway Authority legislation while the authority was a client of your law firm. And now as a candidate, you've done a book tour that's prompted an ethics complaint from your opponent. You say you've acted properly. Do critics have a right to say you should have gone further to avoid any appearance of a conflict?
I have always acted within the ethical guidelines and have been very careful to do so. First and foremost, as a public servant, my job has always been, and my duty has always been, to the people that I represent. It is not a surprise to me that General Abbott has brought these accusations forward in a myriad of ways to try to divert attention from his own failed record, a record where he has sold out hardworking Texans time and time again in the interests of people who make donations to his campaign. Whether that is chemical companies who have given him over $100,000 and then received a ruling from him that they could now keep secret the location of their dangerous chemicals, whether it's payday lenders who have given him $300,000 and then received a ruling from him that they can operate in a loophole in the law that allows them to charge unlimited rates and fees, whether it's taking money from the hospital board chair, when there was a surgeon operating under that administration and harming and hurting many patients and taking money and then siding with that hospital. We see it over and over again.
Senator, could I ask you to address the question about your own dealings, if you would, please?
Yes, and as I said, I have always operated within the ethical requirements, and I've been very careful to do so at every level of government that I have served. I think that people who know me and know my record know this, that I fight for the people that I represent, that I put the hardworking Texans that I represent first and foremost in everything that I do, and that I have been willing to stand up to the biggest, baddest bullies in the world in order to fight for them. That is why I am in public office. That is my record as a public servant, and I'm very proud of that record.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Peggy. We now have a question about ethics as well for you, Attorney General Abbott. Your critics claim that there's been a pattern of you using your Attorney General's office to reward political contributors. The most recent situation involves the Texas Enterprise Fund, which has been in the news this week. It was designed to assist companies that will create jobs. Last week, we learned that you received more than $1 million in campaign donations from parties who received money from that fund, even though an auditor says that some never formally applied for the money and they didn't necessarily prove or could prove that they would create new jobs. State law requires you, as Attorney General, to oversee the fund. So I'm wondering, did you know millions of taxpayer dollars were being handed out without adequate scrutiny? And if you didn't, why didn't you know?
Shelley, I think that no politician is above the law. And frankly, I'm pleased that the state auditor conducted an independent investigation to look at every last detail about what happened. And after that independent investigation by the state auditor, he wrote a report. And in that report, it numbered, I think, 107 pages. And in that 107 pages, where the auditor looked at the conduct about the fund and the conduct of the governor, as well as the conduct of myself and my office, there was nothing in there critical of either me or my office.
What he did say, however, is that there was no scrutiny for a lot of these awards. Should there have been? And why didn't we know? Why didn't you know?
First, there have been different iterations or time periods of the law that allowed this funding. When the funding was first allowed, the way the legislature constructed it, there were no rules or regulations that limited.
Didn't anybody speak up?
They did speak up. 2 years later, when the legislature decided, wait a second, we need to place some more controls on this. And that is when it was reformed. And so those reforms helped put it on a better place. But I think there's a bigger point that needs to be made here, because as you know, from the beginning of my campaign, I have been questioning this very fund and its purposes and uses.
Let me go back to one thing, though, that reporters really want to hear you answer tonight, and that is your agency told reporters who looked into the applications for the Enterprise Fund money that they couldn't see them because there was confidential information in them. We now know that in at least 5 cases where you were denying access to the applications, there weren't any applications. Can you explain that? Why deny access to something that doesn't exist?
Sure. First, our office did issue an opinion based on an open records decision that certain of that information could not be disclosed because of laws passed by the legislature that prohibited them from being disclosed. However, our office ruled that other parts of that information could be disclosed.
But there were no applications.
Well, if you go back and look, you will see that what has been released is a letter that's about 9 or 10 pages long that is the equivalent of an application. But Shelley, this is very important, because at that time, there was no prescription for an application, and that is one of the things that the legislature corrected.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We now go back to our questions for both of you, and the next question comes from Brian, and it goes first to Senator Davis.
You both say that Texas children deserve a first-class education, but Texas ranks 46th in the nation when it comes to the amount of money we spend on each student, about $9,000. That's almost $500 less per student than we spent just a few years ago. Senator Davis, we know you support more funding for education. What is the price tag for your education plans? Please give us a dollar amount, and where would you find that money?
Brian, I was proud in 2011 to filibuster the $5.4 billion in cuts to our public schools. Cuts that my opponent has been fighting in court to keep in place ever since. Cuts that he told a TV audience last week that he had to continue to pursue, when that's absolutely not the truth. My plan calls for investing in making sure that every 4-year-old in this state has access to quality full-day pre-K, that we pay our teachers more in line with national average, that we dramatically reduce standardized tests, and that we create better access to early college, high school, and dual credit classes. That comes at a price. But the question to ask is, at what price will we pay as a state if we don't? I will set a vision for this legislature to begin to move in that direction. It will not happen overnight.